Looks like everybody's either getting their own card game or an MTG Secret Lair, and the people over at Riot Games decided on the former. The new League of Legends TCG Riftbound is set to drop in October, a little over a month from now. This isn't Runeterra, the other League of Legends card game that failed several years ago. That is a whole other rabbit hole to go down that I don't have time to get into. What's important to know is a new card game is coming out. Riftbound takes all the characters you love from League of Legends and the associated series like Arcane and turns them into a fleshed out card game. I want to take a look at the mechanics and rules of the game, discuss the artwork and design of the cards, and my overall thoughts on the game. Before we go any further, I don't know a single thing about League of Legends. I've never played the game, I haven't even seen Arcane yet. Go ahead, bully me in the comments, but that does give me a largely unbiased view for the game. Now, I have heard of Jinx before, but all I know about her and her character is that she's a blue-haired e-girl with shark guns and severe mental health needs. Let's do a brief rundown of the rules and the cards. This won't be an in-depth explanation of every single detail of how to play the game, but a quick and simple explanation of the large moving parts of the game. Looking at the cards and deck construction first, there are several different types of cards in the game. You have your legend, units, gear, spells, battlefields, and runes. Your deck must contain one champion legend, a 40-card deck, a 12-card rune deck, and between 1 to 3 battlefields depending on how you are playing the game. Before we go any further, let's discuss runes. These are the colors for the game. As of right now, you have 2 different runes in your deck. The runes are Fury for red, Calm for green, Chaos for purple, Order is yellow, Mind is blue, and Body is orange. The board will have your rune deck, a rune area, your legend and champion zone, your deck, your trash, and the battlefield locations. We'll go over what each of those different places on the mat is used for as we go through the different card types and mechanics in the game. Your legend is basically the face card of your deck, or if you've played Commander before, it's your commander. They will determine your domain, aka what colors of runes you're allowed to play. If your legend is Volibear Relentless Storm, that means your rune deck will only be Body and Fury runes, and all the cards in your deck must either be Body or Fury cards. If you are Yasuo Unforgiven, you can use Calm and Chaos cards. If it's Ahri Nine-Tailed Fox, you get Calm and Mind, etc. and so on. The legend card will also have bonus effects that you can use during the game. Units are the summons or creatures you use in the game. The cost for units is in the top left-hand corner of the cards. A unit like Legion Rearguard will cost 2 runes to play, meaning you'll tap or exhaust 2 runes to play them. When you play units, they always come in exhausted. That's Riftbound's fancy new word for tapped. At the start of your turn, you'll untap them, aka ready them along with all your other tapped cards. When you play a card, it's going to go into your base. If you want to move a card to a battlefield, that's something different. We'll come back to in a little bit. Cards like Legion Rearguard might have abilities to have them come in ready. For Rearguard, if you exhaust 1 rune of any color and return 1 Fury rune to your rune deck, he'll come in ready and can move immediately. On the top right-hand side of cards are the might of the unit. Might is going to function as both the health of that unit as well as how much damage they can deal. We'll talk more about might later when we talk about how you earn points. Some units will also have the champion keyword on them. When you are setting up the game, you have to choose a champion to put outside of your deck next to your legend card. This champion unit can be played at any time during the game, provided you have the runes to pay for it. Importantly, the champion you choose must have the same tag as your legend. If your legend is Kai'Sa, Daughter of the Void, then your chosen champion unit needs to have the same tag. You could have Kai'Sa Survivor or Kai'Sa Evolutionary as your champion unit. You get to have 3 copies of any card in your deck, and this won't change even with your champion unit. So if your champion unit is Kai'Sa Survivor, you can have 2 more copies of Kai'Sa Survivor in your deck. Some units, as well as other cards, will have a power symbol on it. Right underneath the cost on the top left-hand side is a rune symbol. A card like Magma Worm has 1 red Fury rune underneath its 8 cost. This means you have to tap 8 runes and then return a Fury rune to the bottom of your rune deck in order to play it. You can return a tapped rune though, so if you have 8 runes, that is enough to play them. Soul Golger, on the other hand, is 8 cost, but requires you to return 2 Chaos runes to the bottom of your rune deck when you play them, as noted by the 2 Chaos power symbols underneath his cost. This applies to gear cards as well, such as Seal of Discord has a cost of 0, but has 1 power, so you have to turn a Chaos rune back to your rune deck. Speaking of gears, these are cards that come in and stick around on your board. They're going to stay in your base and they're going to come in ready, that means untapped. For example, if you have Ravenborn Tome, it's going to come in ready, you could activate its effect immediately by tapping it, and then the next spell you play is going to deal extra damage. Casting spells is the same as casting units or playing gear. You pay the cost, and if necessary, you pay the power, but unlike these other cards, spells are not going to stick around. You're going to play them, and then immediately you're going to go to your trash. Falling Star, for example, costs 2 but has power 2, so you tap 2 runes and return 2 Fury runes to your rune deck, then deal 3 damage twice to 1 or 2 units. If you played this card after you used Ravenborn Tome and tapped it, you deal 4 damage to each unit instead. Spells may also be able to be played during a showdown, in which it'll tell you with the action keyword. For example, if you have Cleave, you can play that onto a unit during your turn or during a showdown, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. There are also signature cards. These cards are tied to a specific legend. For example, Super Mega Death Rocket can only be played in a deck where Jinx is the legend. You also only get to have 3 signature cards total in your deck, not 3 copies of each signature card, but 3 total. Now our last card type are battlefields. These will be placed in the center of the board at the start of the game. This will serve to help you earn points that we'll come back to in just a second. You only need 1 battlefield to play, but if you're doing a best of 3 match, you'll need to have 3 battlefields ready. In the first game of a best of 3, you might choose Altar to Unity. Whether or not you win that game, in the second game you cannot use Altar of Unity again. You must choose between your 2 remaining battlefields. As you can tell from the board, there are 2 spaces for battlefields. In assuming we're doing a 2-player game, each player is going to put down 1 battlefield. Now for Riftbound, it can be technically up to a 4-player game, at which point each player would have 1 battlefield and there would be 4 in total. Again, for the rest of this video, I'm going to focus on just the 2-player game. Now, how do you win the game? That'll be done through the battlefields we just talked about. Once during your turn, you can move readied units to the battlefields on the board. When you move a unit, it becomes exhausted. If you move to an open battlefield and conquer it, you earn a point. And then in between turns, if you hold a battlefield, when it comes back to your turn, you'll earn another point. For example, if I move Jinx to a battlefield, then I get a point. Passes to my opponent's turn. At the end of their turn, Jinx is still on the battlefield and in control. I'll earn a second point. The first person to earn 8 points will win the game, but there are special rules for earning your last point. In order to earn your last point of the game, you either have to conquer both battlefields on the same turn, conquer 1 battlefield and hold it until it comes back to your next turn, or there are some effects on units that can give you your final point. If you're already in control of both battlefields and are on 7 points at the start of your turn, you just have to maintain control of 1 when it comes back to you, then you'll earn your last point and win the game. Now, what if you want to stop your opponent from earning points? That's where showdowns come into play. If your opponent has units placed on location, then you're going to have to fight them off. For example, your opponent has 2 Ravenbloom units on a battlefield. You can move a unit there to fight them. Let's say you move 2 Flame Chompers to attack them. You'll compare the might on the cards on each side of the battlefield. 2 Flame Chompers have 6 might compared to Ravenbloom students' total of 4, so the Chompies win. But now the player with the Ravenbloom students decides where to put the 4 damage they get to deal. The player could deal 2 damage to each Chomper, but damage gets healed at the end of a showdown, so that won't matter. They're likely going to deal 4 damage to one of the Chompers and kill it. Now the player with their Chomper conquered the battlefield and will gain a point. If their Chomper stays in control by the end of the next turn, they'll earn another point. Sometimes you may want to attack a battlefield even if you can't conquer it, just so you can clear some of your opponent's units. That'll depend on the scenario you're in. Importantly to know, all of the units at a battlefield are not technically in your base. They've moved out of your base. So a card that says return a unit to a base is going to remove that card from the battlefield. You can also place spells during a showdown if it has the action keyword. Using the Chompers and Student example again, if the Student's player gives their units a cleave during showdown, it would increase their power to 7 and then to 9 because the Students have the ability to gain 1 might when a spell is played, and so they'd win combat instead of the Chompers. Each player will go back and forth and decide whether or not they wish to play a spell during combat. If both players say they don't want to play a spell, then they count them on each side and decide who wins. Only other information to know is you start the game off with 4 cards in your hand, you return up to 2 of them to the bottom of your deck and draw the amount you put back as a mulligan. And the phases for the turns go Awaken, Beginning, and Action. Awaken is when you ready everything, Beginning is when you get points for holding a battlefield and you get more runes, and Action is when you move units around. Play units, spells, and gears and start showdowns. During your beginning phase, you're going to get 2 runes if you go first, and 3 runes if you go second, and then every turn after that you'll get 2 runes. This is basically a catch-up mechanic. Going first is usually better in most card games, so the going second player is going to start off with more runes in play. Moving on from the mechanics, let's take a look at the artwork. The artwork on the cards is solid. I really like the design on the border for all the cards. It's cool and simple. It's a lot better than the white border they had initially. I'm really glad they went back and reworked it. The colors are very clear on the cards. It's not hard to tell which rune they're associated with. My favorite card art by far has to be Recall. He's just a cute little guy who's going to steal your unit for me. The signature cards are also gorgeous. Last Breath is particularly pretty, but even other normal spells like Mystic Reversal look incredible. There are some cards whose artwork falls a bit short. Falling Star is a bit lackluster, and Disintegrate I think could be improved. They're just less pretty than other cards in the sets. But the artist did an incredible job with these cards. I'm so happy that they didn't do screenshots from the video game for the cards. That would have been both disappointing and extremely lazy on their end, and is a big mistake that Bandai continues to make in pretty much every new card game they come out with. The design on them is simple and easy to read. Honestly, the only thing I don't like about the overall card design is that the text is in first person. Cards refer to themselves like I ready myself or I deal damage, which is just really weird to me. I'd prefer if they said this card instead, but that's probably my influence from other card games. Overall, really good card art design and structure for the cards. Now my final thoughts on the game. It looks pretty good. It's a bit more complex to get into than a lot of other card games just because there's a lot of setup to go through and explanations you need to know for both deck building and the battlefield mechanic. That's not to say it's too complex, but I had a bit of a hard time trying to simplify all the information for this game than I do for other games I talk about. It takes a lot of inspiration from Magic the Gathering, but using the external mana system to prevent mana screw is a fantastic change. I do think the battlefield mechanic is interesting. It creates very swingy turns and a very swingy game in general though. If you put all your units onto one base and your opponent manages to put the same amount of units on that battlefield with one more might than you lose your entire board. Granted, if that happens, you'll also probably remove all of their board as well. I'm curious to see how the metagame evolves around this style of gameplay. It does feel the game was designed for 4-player games first, and 2-player games were more of an afterthought. According to the game developers, they were focusing a lot more on making it a 4-person game a la Commander when designing it, and you see a lot of inspiration in the game's design there. I personally prefer 2-player games for most card games, so I hope card design takes 2-player into more consideration rather than focusing on just a 4-player casual format. I think the game has a pretty strong IP behind it, and while I haven't seen Arcane, I know it is immensely popular. I am worried about its longevity though. With the death of the other League of Legends card game a few years ago, it doesn't bode well for the TCG. On top of all that, the fact there are so many new card games coming out, I am worried it will die off simply because the market is becoming oversaturated with card games. Riftbound has the beginnings of a great game, but we'll have to wait and see how the new sets impact the playstyle and whether or not it can hold a candle not only to the big three, but the very long list of other new card games vying for consumers' attention. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, if you could leave a like, comment, and subscribe, that would mean a ton. Have a good one.